Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
The 2023 season's just about here. This is probably our last off-season summer episode, if you will, camp preseason. Yeah, I would say so, because Friday will be our first real deep dive into the opponent, to the Cleveland Browns, of course. That's who the Bengals play week 1. Today's wrapping up some loose ends from the offseason, as well as taking some questions and projecting the 2023 season in a lot of different ways. What's on your mind? I asked for questions on Twitter. Got a lot of good ones, good responses, thought-provoking topics that we'll dive through. This is Bengals on the Brain. I'm Joe Goodberry. The show is presented by First Star Logistics. And the Bengals are practicing today as I record this. The only guy missing from practice is Joseph Osai, who's in uniform but doing rehab work, which that's good news and a good indication of why the Bengals didn't put him on IR. They probably believe he can be back in the next few weeks rather than missing 4 games. So to see him in uniform, that's good. To see him on pace, that's good. We also saw Willie Anderson. Shout out to Willie Anderson. He's the best right tackle in modern football history. We should actually do an episode on that. That'd be nice if we got time. But he was at practice watching. The other topic we should discuss before, and maybe it happens by the time this even comes out, but are we hitting the panic button? Are we concerned? What's your level of concern with Joe Burrow's contract not being done yet? And to be clear, yes, he potentially has 2 years left and maybe even longer. You can franchise tag him, as we'll see. You never let that guy go. But the opportunity to extend him now within a reasonable window that all of the franchise quarterbacks seem to get extended under, we're hitting it's about 11:58 on the clock here. And if you want to reduce his future cap hits and you want to get him done now, because teams typically do not still negotiate during the regular season, you want that to be done with. Do we see it this week? Are you worried? Are you nervous? And if you're asking me, I am. I'm looking at this like, this should be done. This should be simple. If it was a simple step progression up from the Justin Herbert contract, this will be done by now, but it's not. And we're looking at this like, okay, so it's not a simple contract. Something has to be going on here. Something different has to be going on here. What is the issue? What is the sticking issue? Is it length? Is it we're waiting for other chips to fall? And people bring up the T. Higgins thing, and I don't see that even being a factor because I'm not even sure T. Higgins gets extended ultimately. That's a different conversation for a different time, and maybe that happens right away, right? And that will make me look like a fool and have that done tomorrow by the time this airs. But the Burrow thing hopefully gets done in the next few days here, and hopefully is done before the Bengals line up in Cleveland on Sunday. All right, let's dive into the questions from Twitter. The first one here is from Real Brad. Will we see more creativity in the offensive play calling this year? It seems we have all of the offensive pieces, but can the coaches get them in the right spots to be a top 3 scoring offense? And there was another one that was very similar, so we'll put them together here. This is from the German Tiger. How much more creativity can we expect from the offensive play calling regarding route concepts? So let's dive into that right away. I see this as a common question and a common concern with the offense and with the coaching and people that still have reservations maybe about the staff is you watch a team like the 49ers, for example, and you say, man, everything they do is just schemed up. The whole offense works. Doesn't matter who you plug in there. Yeah, it's great to plug in Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and George Kittle and guys like that, but you can plug in anyone and it seems like they have production. Or when Justin Jefferson's going off for 180 yards and Jamar Chase has 80 because the Bengals don't scheme him open, or Justin Jefferson is just, how is he? They don't have all these weapons around him. How is he still uncovered on this play? We want that. And I caution that mindset just a little bit because first, if you're scheming everything all the time, that means you're reliant on, let's say you're rock, paper, scissors, and you're throwing out there rock. And it's good when you're going against scissors. But as you see these teams a lot of times when they get to, and I think of the Ravens as well in this division with Lamar Jackson, when they get to the better opponents or they get to the teams that can take away that rock, can you flip to something else? Can you go to something else? And maybe the 49ers can. Like, they are an efficient running team. Their efficiency is extremely high for the passing game because it works and because they have counters to go to. But if you're a team like the Vikings that don't, then it makes it tough. If you're a team like the Ravens that don't have that counter, it makes it tough. So, do you want to be a team that's overly reliant on a schemed offense? I don't think you do. And it's a good thing that the Bengals have high-end weapons all around Burrow. They got Pro Bowl running backs, they got Pro Bowl receivers, and of course, you have a first overall pick at quarterback. So you can run anything and it works. The downside to what the Bengals do is that sometimes a good scheme will take away your best players. And they will double Jamar Chase and they will double T. Higgins and they will say, beat us with Joe Mixon and Irv Smith this year. And those guys aren't as special as Higgins and Jamar Chase. So you're not going to likely have the same outcome or success. And that's partly a big reason why the Bengals have struggled to score in the postseason on offense. You're going against better defenses. You're going against coaching staffs that are trying to take your best players away. So they're not always there. So I get the criticism and idea that the Bengals aren't scheme dependent enough to take advantage of some of these things. And what I mean is, when you looked last year and they tried to come out in that wide zone scheme still, it's a staple of a Rams offense where Zach Taylor's from. Even Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator, his father runs wide zone heavy scheme pretty much his entire career. And I have to assume has filtered some of that to his son. And Frank Pollock as well, the offensive line and run game coordinator, comes from a wide zone background. So they wanted to do it. And they realized very quickly, I mean, at the time in September, it was a bit of a headache, but they realized and saved their season last season that if they turn to more of a shotgun, almost exclusive approach and run inside power, gap, and inside zone stuff, they can have much higher degree of success. And they ended up being a team that isn't overly reliant on one system, but actually could do everything in bits and pieces of all of them. And they got really efficient at them. When they realized, okay, teams aren't going to let us just bomb the ball downfield to the sidelines, they became the best cover two offense, the best offense versus cover two in the entire NFL in terms of efficiency, especially when they're on that 10-game win streak. So it goes both ways. If you're overly reliant on a particular scheme as your staple, a lot of teams can't adjust and can't say, all right, we can move on to this. We can go to this. We can find out what works next. The Bengals are more like, and I don't want to compare them to the greatest run of coaching and team and dynasty in the NFL history, but more like the Patriots, where whatever they have to do to win on that particular week, they are able to do it because they're efficient and proficient enough in everything that they can flip to it and say, we have the talent to overcome that little bit of scheme deficiency we have where we're not the most creative team. We're going to line Jamar Chase and say, Jamar Chase is going to beat your corner. We're not worried about it. Go out there, beat the guy, and Joe Burrow is going to make a great throw. That's great while those guys are out there. It's great when one thing gets taken away and you can pivot to another. They do this on defense all the time. We have the same expectations for defense that Lou Anarumo is going to switch scheme up. It could be at halftime. It could be after 2 drives. It could be on a final drive to end the game. And they will switch everything they're doing up, drop of a hat, and say, we're proficient enough in these other schemes and these other ideas to do them. The Bengals will do that on offense as well. And we've seen that throughout the entire Zach Taylor era. So I don't get the criticism of being not creative enough. I think they're one of the more dynamic offenses in the league in terms of being able to do anything, and you don't know what you're going to get. Now, I do think they can end up with a better play action offense because it's still free yardage, chunk plays, and RPOs. which are run pass options. And I'm not talking about read options. I'm talking about deciding, are we running here or passing here based on either pre-snap alignment, or if the read linebacker or whatever defender you're reading crashes down. And we'll have video on that. We will do a lot of RPO stuff, I'm assuming, this year and on our film review episodes. So we will see that. I do think you can get a lot of big plays out of those. You can get some of the numbers advantages back in your favor in those. And I think we will see it. Now, we haven't yet. So I understand that part of being unsure. But I don't have a problem with this offense and the design of this offense. And I think when the offensive line is good, probably for the first time, I think we'll be able to get to some of these better, deeper, and more extravagant route combos as the German Tiger questions. So moving on to the next questions here. First question of a group of 3 here that ask about the running back positions from Leader Cincy 22. How do you see the early season running back snap share going? And next we see from Grinny, what do you expect the rotation of running backs to be as far as third down back and primary pass blocker? And then finally from Adam Mitchell, is the lack of a solid pass blocking running back going to cost this team? And then he goes on, we'll get to his other ones after this. Was the draft mostly a waste on offense? And can they still play fast facing too high safety sets? So good questions about the running back position. It's one of the positions we probably have our biggest concerns with, biggest question marks going into 2023 after Travion Williams missed the entire preseason and still made the roster. That tells me what I've heard is probably true. We should expect Travion Williams to be the third down back to start. Now, I don't think that's a clean-cut win or it's his job locked down for the season. I do think Chris Evans had a good, productive summer, and he may get a chance again to play on offense in certain roles. When he looked better pass protecting, definitely. But in pass protection, as a receiver for sure, and we have to see how they mix that in because I expect him to be the primary kick returner as well. And then you have 5th round pick, Chase Brown, who they like a lot, still like a lot, expect to get him involved. But can you activate all 4 running backs early in the season? So when you ask about the running back rotation early, will Chase Brown be out there right away? Will he be inactive? Will they quickly just deactivate Chris Evans? I don't expect that because of the return job. You could have Travion Williams do it, though. But Travion's been injured. Again, a lot of questions. Maybe you just activate all 4 and figure it out from there and maybe go lighter on the offensive line or lighter on somewhere on the defense, maybe at a linebacker or a defensive tackle. Point being here is there are a lot of questions still to be answered. There is a scenario where they run Joe Mixon and wear him out. I guess there's still a scenario where they let Joe Mixon be the third down back. If it was me, and we've got a question up here of what changes would I make, I would try to get Mixon to be that third down back as much as possible. I want him out there in the passing offense. I want him out there in 2-minute drills. I want him out there when it's crunch time to make a play and make things happen when your team needs it. I don't want him on the bench in the AFC Championship game. I don't want him on the bench on the last drive in the Super Bowl. Because honestly, 3rd and 1, I expect Joe Mixon to pick that up, where Samaje Perine didn't. But that brings me into the last question by Adam Mitchell, where he asks, is it going to kill this offense, not having a third down pass protecting running back? And it brings me back to 2021. Perine wasn't very good as a protector. That was his first year doing it. He was really good last year. So was it in him? Did he get better as the season went? Yes, in 2021. But still, he wasn't very good. And they still got to the Super Bowl. And I know, Burrow got hit way too much. We don't want to say, hey, you can get sacked 60 times and still make it to the Super Bowl. You can get sacked 9 times in a playoff game and still win, because you really can't. I mean, you don't want to play with that loaded gun too often, right? You don't want to risk it and mess around. But they have. It didn't kill their offense. They were still a highly explosive offense. And when you look at it even last year with a good pass protecting back in Samaje Perine, between Perine and Mixon and the couple plays that Evans and Williams got, they asked their running backs to pass protect 7 times per game. We're talking about 7 snaps a game, and Mixon's getting half of those. So if we're saying he gets 3 or 4, we're only talking about 3 or 4 snaps that we need in pass protection out of Chris Evans, Travion Williams, or Chase Brown. I think they can handle it. I think they can figure it out, even if one of those guys are bad. We're talking about maybe they mess up one play and you figure it out and he's not going to be out there next time. You go to the next guy. So I don't think it will kill their offense at all, even if they can't find a good one this year. I think they've got enough guys to exploit it, and maybe they can be better receivers than Pirine was, more explosive receivers than Pirine was. And I'm thinking of Chris Evans and Chase Brown completely there. And Joe Mixon, if he gets into that role and can play that role, he's clearly more explosive than Samaje Pirine was as a pass receiver. So it could actually help their offense a little bit if they embrace it and take a step there. But to finish Adam Mitchell's questions of, was the offensive draft class a waste as rookies? Because I showed some numbers last week about day 3 rookie receivers in Bengals history. There's only been one player to ever score more than one touchdown. There's like, so when people are out here projecting Andre Yoshivach, like, could he have 5 touchdowns this year? No. Like, it's not going to happen. If it happens, he's great, and that's good for everyone. But even Charlie Jones, he's a 4th round pick, day 3 receiver. 1 touchdown this year we should expect. So you should not be expecting big contributions on offense out of Charlie Jones or Andre Yosevach unless Tyler Boyd or Jamar Chase or T. Higgins get hurt. And we do not want that. Nobody wants that. So if we're talking as a total here, I'm projecting as at this point 2 touchdowns for Charlie Jones, 1 for Andre Yosevach, and that's on the high end. That's maybe they get in garbage time or week 17 and they get to play. Maybe it's just 1 for each guy. And then finally, Adam Mitchell's last question was, can the Bengals still play fast in 2 high safety sets? So against 2 high, which was what plagued them last year, where they had the dink and dunk, go 8 plays, 10 plays, 12 play drives. I've said this before, but if you have 1 explosive play in a drive, you're 4 times as likely to score on that drive. So you really need 1 explosive play per drive to really ramp up your output. So teams playing these 2 high shells in these quarter coverages and in these cloud coverages to keep those from happening are trying to make you go as many plays as possible. So I think Adam's talking about that. But playing at a faster pace is something we haven't talked about too much. And I do think getting up to the line and snapping it earlier and quicker could be a good counter to the way defenses are trying to disguise what they're showing pre-snap and post-snap to this Bengals offense. So it may not have been your question, Adam, but I do think pace could be something we talk about or look back on in a few weeks here. Okay, next set of questions here. Next one is from Brandon H. Is there a way to get Higgins and Chase the ball effectively when they are both doubled that the Bengals haven't tapped into yet? Along those same lines from Scott Chrisman, can we use Mixon and Irv Smith to open up our long game? And then finally, from Governor Chief, if you were in charge of game planning for the Bengals, what would you focus on offensively and defensively? Now, these could be for the Browns game, right? Or just in general, I guess, from Governor, or is it Chief this time? But to go back to the first question here, can you get Chase and Higgins deep that the Bengals haven't done? You know, it was an issue. You got to get these explosive plays back. I touched on it just in that last segment there. You got to get these explosive plays back into the offense. Maybe not at the rate they were in 2021, but you got to find different ways to do it. And if defenses aren't allowing you to do it, how can you get those? How can you get them to happen? Well, first, easy answer, and this goes into, can Joe Mixon and Irv Smith help out with that? Can you get defenses out of that cover 2 shell? That's the easiest way to do it. Simplest way to do it. Get them out of it. How do you do that? You got to be able to run the ball and scare defenses. And I'm not talking getting 4, 5, 6 yards, which every offensive coordinator will take in the league. I'm talking you need to rip some off, some 20, 30, 40 yarders. Because defenses, like I said earlier too, defenses will allow you to go 10 plays all day long. You want to rip off 5 yards per carry? Fine. Do the math, guys. You start the ball at the 30, and how many plays is it going to take you before you're even within the 10-yard line? Going 5 yards a carry. They'll let you do that all day long because you'll have a false start. You'll have a hold. You'll finally decide to throw it, and you'll have a sack or an incomplete pass, and you're kicking a field goal or punting. Defenses will take that they'll give up 5 yards per play all day if they have a good offense on the other side, because then they're eventually going to put that pressure on you. So you need to get the explosive plays back. And once you rip off these 30-yard runs, 40-yard runs, defensive coordinators go, all right, we got to get someone else in the box. We got to put someone else down there. We got to get these numbers down there. They will give up the 5. They do not want to give up 25. Because now one play in, and from that 30, you're already now on their 45. If you rip that off from your own 40, you're in field goal range. So they don't want to give up the explosives on the ground or in the air. Maybe that's Chase Brown this year. Maybe that's Chris Evans this year. It's probably not Mixon, and it's probably not Travion Williams. Maybe Mixon starts breaking tackles again. I don't want to be, too mean about the guy, but he's not breaking tackles anymore. Not the way he was. He's not explosive as he was before. So you need to get the explosive plays back. But can the Bengals do something else? Say you don't have the personnel. Say you can't get Chase Brown or Evans the ball, and they're not ripping off explosive runs. Yes, there are other things you can do. And that's where I talked about, now bringing Governor Chief's question, and that's why I talked about the RPOs and the play action stuff. If you can get an unblocked defender to read the run and then you throw the ball, you're taking another defender out of that at least intermediate zone. So these are you mostly see slants and digs off RPOs and crossing routes. You pull the ball out, you replace the hold the linebacker left as he gets sucked up, and you throw the ball right there. That's an RPO. But what it does is you do that a few times and defenses go, okay, let's add another defender in the box and make these windows tighter, and you can't throw those anymore. And then now I can go over the top. See, again, give me another defender in the box. Also, the play action game. Of course, if I can get a safety to bite on a run action, it takes away from 2 safeties deep, and I can hit the deep ball again. The O-line's got to be able to protect. And do you need a good running game to do that? You actually don't. I've showed this in the film review. It helps. I know playing linebacker, if they're running it down your throat, the play action helps, but you're still reading the offensive line most of the time. And if they look like they're run blocking, you're coming up to play the run. If they're pass protecting, you're going back to defend the pass. So the play action has no effect unless the linemen are selling it, and which is why in preseason I showed the one play. I think I showed it on here. It might have been on Twitter, where the Bengals are pulling guards on play action passes. So the linebacker is going to read that, move up because that looks like a run to pull your guard, and then they're going to throw the ball over the middle. And again, the defense will adjust, try to get more guys there, and then you can throw vertically over the top. So more RPOs. The other thing the Bengals will do in order to free up Higgins and Chase, a lot of 3-by-1 sets or trips to one side. And what I mean by 3-by-1 is, and that doesn't have to be receivers, but you got 3 offensive receivers. Could be the tight end, could be the running back on one side, and then one guy on the right side. So if and when they do this, because they have put Chase and Boyd in the slot, they've put Boyd and Higgins in the slot, they've put a tight end over there. It could be Irv Smith. But getting all 3 receivers on the same side, you're not going to be able to double them. You may be able to put a safety just over the top, but you can create a lot of confusion. You can actually get Boyd versus a linebacker, which they did a lot. So there's a lot of things you can do out of that. They've also put both Higgins and Chase on the same side together. The Jamar Chase touchdown in the playoffs versus the Bills was that play. And because of it, they ended up with a confusion on the defensive side of the ball, and the Bengals were able to take advantage of it and score on that play. So there are things the Bengals do. There are things they can do more of, moving these guys more and more and more comfort in this offense, better offensive line. If you can get the running game to get more explosive, that's going to help as well. And on defensively, to finish Governor Chief's question, what would I do to change or what would I add to the game plan? Maybe you're talking about this week, which will be the next bit of questions. I'd like to see Akeem Davis-Gaither get some more pass rushing and blitzing snaps. I think he can do it. He did it a lot at Appalachian State. I think you can do a lot of things that way. I would also be in favor of seeing DJ Turner get some slot snaps. I know he's not the biggest guy, and run defense is paramount in this Lou Anarumo defense from the slot, but I think you could get some speed and athleticism there that they don't have with Mike Hilton. For as much as we love Mike Hilton, he's just not a great athlete, and sometimes he gets picked on a little bit in coverage. I think you could mix it up a little bit and maybe use Hilton more as a safety in the box and put Turner as the slot corner. And I'd like to see that. Last couple questions coming up now. First question is from Zoltz. What's going to be the biggest battle against the Browns? Is it the O-line versus the Browns D-line, Bengals wide receivers versus Browns secondary? I think it is O-line D-line. And first, not just because the Bengals have really struggled with the Browns edge rushers, and why wouldn't you? I think Myles Garrett is as good as it gets at defensive end. I think he is the best edge rusher in the league. But now adding Zadarius Smith at the other side, a power rusher that's been highly productive. I mean, he's probably one of the most underrated edge rushers in the entire NFL, and he's going to be using that power against Jonah Williams making his first start at right tackle. I think they have the advantage on both sides. I think the Browns still have Myles Garrett and Smith are better than Orlando Brown, and Jonah Williams. But will it matter if you can get the ball off quickly? We've seen this before. We've seen it with poor offensive lines, worse offensive lines, much worse. The Bengals get the ball out. Joe Burrow makes the reads. He's clear. He's concise. And the ball comes out before those guys can even touch you. That could happen again very easily. And my concern with that, though, is that Burrow missing the time in preseason. Will he be as crisp and clean and sharp internally with his mentals, with his processing, with his internal clock to be able to keep that pass rush off of him? Now, I do not believe the Browns have a very good interior pass rush. They have made some upgrades. They are going to kick some of these defensive ends inside. We'll see how it goes, but really not a threat. They're just, they can beat you. I mean, the Browns, their entire pass rush has gotten to the Bengals over the last couple of years, but do I expect it to? No. Could it happen? Sure. Whatever. That's football. I do think that is the biggest test, though, and the biggest match, because you sign these guys, you're paying a lot of money between your tackles. They got to be able to hold up, but I just don't like the matchup here. So moving on, that doesn't, we'll get to the positive ends of it. But if you're looking from a Bengals perspective, got to block those guys up front for Cleveland, in Cleveland. So it's going to be loud. Next question. From Kyle 430. Does the offensive game plan change if Denzel Ward cannot go? And what's the best way to manage Myles Garrett? So Denzel Ward is not practicing, not at the facility as of Monday in Cleveland. He has had multiple concussions over his career dating back to college. We're talking 4 or 5 at this point. We don't know if he's going to be cleared at all. It happened in the last preseason game. So for you, those of you out there that wanted these guys to play a little bit more in preseason, the downside of it, Denzel Ward has been a pain in the butt for the Bengals. I still think he's very good. Yes, it changes a little bit. They have good corners, though. So even if it's Newsome and Martin Emerson, they're fine because the pass rush should be good. But yeah, you take off the best corner on the team, that's going to have an effect. Does it change the game plan? No, because you still expect your guys to win. You still expect your guys to do what they do. And you're still kind of like, I don't think teams in today's NFL avoid corner ones unless they're like truly generational, magical players. I think they say, we're not going to throw the boundary if you don't let us. We're not going to throw over the middle if you don't let us. Offenses are going to take what you give them. And when you have enough weapons that the Bengals do, whatever you want to give them, they feel 100% comfortable with. So what is the best way to manage Myles Garrett? And that's the best way to put it, is manage, because you're not going to shut him down. It's going to be off play action, chipping, giving him extra attention, RPOs, things that look like runs to slow him down, and then throwing the ball, running at him, running away from him. both are in the game plan to try and stay away from him as much as possible, because he's a good run defender as well. But you can slow him down if you run at the guy, because then the play action comes next, and he's reading run, and then he has to pass rush. So there are ways to do it. You're hoping he is managed to like 3 pressures and 1 sack type of game. You don't want him batting. If you remember the Halloween game, the horrible Halloween game, they're running the RPOs, and then they go and throw it, and he bats a ball in the air, and it gets intercepted. And so you don't want those. You don't want sack, force fumbles. If he gets home, it's going to happen. He's a good player. It is what it is. Next question as we wrap this up, as most of these have been in the same vein. This is from Dewey at Fanatic Cincy. Several keys to victory versus the Browns, but if you could only pick one, what's yours? And I'm going to go in a different direction, even though I said I know like O-line, D-line, best matchup. That's not, for me, not key to victory. You hope to block those guys. Key to victory, converting in the red zone and extend it all the way to the 30. You don't want to settle for field goals. You don't want to settle for, we had a good drive, bend but don't break. Both defenses are going to try and do that, try and force the other guy to make a mistake. Can the Bengals capitalize inside that 25, 30-yard range? Because they like to take shots in that 40 to 45-yard range going into the end zone. And, I think that's when their offense is probably at its best, is around that 50-yard marker. But when they get inside and things get tighter and the windows are tighter, and now you really don't have the threat of going deep, and now defenses are expecting you to keep things intermediate and over the middle, can you still find a way to convert and punch it in? That's when the running game becomes vitally important. That's when the offensive line becomes even more important. Can they be physical? Can they lean on this defense after 8 plays, 10 plays? Can you lean on them? Can you push the point of attack? Can you punch that ball in on the ground? If they can do that, I think the Bengals are going to come out and be successful. And as long as Deshaun Watson doesn't look like 2019 Deshaun Watson, the Bengals will be fine, I think, overall. But if he is, and it's a shootout type of game, then the Bengals need to capitalize in the red zone in order to win this one. And that's my key, my biggest key for this Sunday's game, even though we're not even there yet. Friday is going to be more projecting at Sunday's game. But good question there. This has been Bengals on the Brain. I'm Joe Goodberry. The show is brought to you by First Star Logistics. We will see you again at the end of the week. And we got football. Chiefs, Lions on Thursday. Real, actual games. Man, I can't believe it's here. Bring out the pumpkin spice and the hoodies. It's fall season. Football weather. Not really. It's 90 degrees today. But let's get there.
Dave Lapham here. And every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.